talk about right now is I'm going to go through the list of all the new stuff that we've done since the last conference. And when you don't have a conference for 15 to 20 years, it's a long list. But I think what it does is it shows you that we really have been trying to keep adding things to filePro in order to address the needs of our customers. Both from end users, which we have direct end users, as well as the developers that resell their own applications. So we're going to start off with what's new since the last conference. Some of these you probably already know, especially if you're on the newer versions. But a lot of people are still on 4.5, 4.8, and 5.0. And these things are all new since then. Really, they started with 5.7. So one of the first things we did in 5.7 was we really added it in 5.6, but we called it a Windows ODBC version of filePro, and it was 1.0, because we had no idea what we were doing. ODBC was something that filePro just never addressed, and so we wanted to try to give people the openness of being able to talk to other databases. So we added it to Windows first. Then, in 5.7, we added it to Unix as well as Windows, and it became a standard part of the product. One of the things we did when we implemented the licensing is we separated out development and runtime licenses. For those people who remember, there was a day when if you wanted runtime, you had to buy development. They always had to be equal. Well, now they don't. Development is completely separate. Development costs more money, so don't buy as many of those as you need in runtimes. Runtimes are cheaper, so we gave people the flexibility on how they package their own needs. We also added in basically free runtimes with every development session that you bought. So if you did buy development, you had at least a matching runtime, which was the old way that we used to do it, which we still do. One of the new things that we've recently done is we've added in an event trigger for reports. We've always had when breaking on a report, where at the end of a break, a sort break, you could do certain things and check certain things and print certain things in that particular when break. Now we've added in do something at the start of the break. So you can do it both ends. You can actually take the sort area of your processing and do something before and after. We'll go through a lot of these in more detail as the weekend progresses, but we wanted to get the whole list out so everybody could see what we've done. We added in processing the ability to encode and decode certain pieces of information so that you could actually control how it gets stored in a particular file and not have it visible to somebody who just looked at the file. And as you know, maybe some of you don't know, if you just look at a filePro file, you can read it. So this gave you the ability to take that information, encode it, store it, and then when somebody wanted to look at it, you bring it off the hard drive, decode it, and display it. We added in color screen editing to NICs. And somebody last night asked me, I wish you would do this. It was Nick. And it's been there since 5.7. And a lot of people don't even know it. I don't know what people look at when they hit the F8 for options button, and there's a list of things, and L is right there, and it says color screens, color editing. But that's okay. It's there. We heard you, and it irked me awful that we couldn't do it because I like color. Then what we did was we expanded to the 32-bit and 64-bit world, and we did 64-bit compiles for filePro. I'll let the tech guys tell you why, because I don't know. To me, a program's a program. And I don't see any difference in speed between the 32 and the 64. But there must have been a technical reason for it.
Usually compatibility with other operating systems. The 32-bit you can always run on a 64-bit operating system, but not vice versa. The 64-bit compiles allow for larger memory access. You can go through and use more of the memory all at once.
See, I knew there was a reason.
And then just interfacing with the native drivers, depending on the operating system, you get more control or more finite control over what you're doing, depending on the bitness of your compile.
I will make this one caveat for you so that you know, okay? If you have a 64-bit server, you can't just assume, all right, I'm going to load the 64-bit filePro onto this machine, especially in the Windows world, okay? Because if you do and you have 32-bit workstations, they're not going to be able to load that program and run with it. So you have to go with the lowest denominator in Windows as what you have in your network.
And that's new?
That's
The
not-
lowest
that's-
denominator being Windows?
Well, no, the lowest bit denominator is what I'm saying. In other words, if you have a 32-bit workstation anywhere in your system, you're stuck with a 32-bit system, even on your server.
And if you don't want
Now,
to-
that's not necessarily true because some people will run both, okay, which you can do. You can load two different filePros, and depending on your startup batch, you can actually have it switch based on what that workstation is coming into it.
And I'll tell you how to avoid that problem so you can run 64-bit all day long,
Oh, and see-
regardless of the client later today.
That's one of the things we love about these conferences. We learn things that we didn't know filePro could do. Then we took the encoding of pieces of data and we took it one step further and said, okay, some people don't want this particular filePro file to be readable at all to anybody in the outside world, so we added encrypted files, where you actually go in, you check a box on filePro, and the entire file becomes encrypted. When you look at it, you can see that there's a substantial difference. You have no way of knowing what is in that filePro file. We added PDF output. How many people had problems with printers? Everybody. Well, when PDF became a standard, we knew that we were going to do it. There were three parties, packages out there that would do PCL to PDF, and there were other utilities that were third party that actually did it more automatically. But we knew that at some point we had to do PDF. So we did a basic PDF generator in one of our updates. One of the things everybody asked for was browse lookups in output processing. We don't really know why it was never put in, but it wasn't, but it's there now. We also, Windows was always limited, especially when it was in its early stages, with things like the user command. We could never implement it on Windows, and then all of a sudden, Windows grew up with us, and we were able to add it to the Windows side because it's a feature that's been in Nix for a long time. That's encrypted files again. Well, my goodness, this is a repeat. How did that happen?
There you go.
All right, here we go. Then we had people who, for security reasons and backup reasons, they wanted to make sure that their data was secure. It was critical data. And just having it sitting in a filePro file on your server is not necessarily the best thing to do, so we added in dual write and mirroring. This enables you to designate someplace else on the hard drive or on the network where you could actually have whatever you're doing and adding to the main database was instantaneously at the same time writing out to the mirrored site so that you had some critical backup for your system. Recently, in the 5.6.0 version, or 5.8, I don't even remember when this one was done, we added in the ability to link automatic processing to the main processing table. You always had to do the -Y and -Z when you had a mixed match, something that wasn't automatic in the main processing table. Now what you can do is you go into that processing table and you can actually tie in an alternate automatic processing that you want to use. So I always had the problem when I was programming an application where I would want an alternate process, but then I had to make a menu option in order to get CABE to look at the right processing and automatic together. And if I forgot, then all of a sudden I'm using a regular automatic table with the wrong processing table and nothing matched up, and I would get errors and nothing would work, and I'd say, oh my goodness gracious, what have I done? But now, because I can tie the two together, I don't even have to worry about it. I can override that with my -Y flag, but I don't have to remember to use it for something that is normal. In defined processing, everybody kept asking for search and replace. And it's probably been one of the things that a lot of people talked about last night the most, that has been a lifesaver to them, where now they can go into CABE, they can look at their processing table and they say, hey, I want to replace this label with something else, or this word with something else. And you just go through and you can either do them all, or you can selectively do each one as it comes up on the screen. And it makes it real easy to change things within your processing table when you need to. In CABE, we've also added in the ability to jump to and show all of the labels in your processing table. And there was always a problem with me, well, I need to go to this key, but I don't know if it's there. Well, search would help me find that it's there, but now all it does is it pops up a little browse window and you go down and you select the one you want and it jumps there. So it's really handy to get around to the different areas of your processing much quicker. We now give you the ability to filter out certain output processing from the list that pops up when you press F. Sometimes, you'd have a check output and a report output and a form output, and you'd have all these things, and really you only wanted the end user to select from like 3 out of 10, and you couldn't filter it out. Now you can. You just go into the output format and you tell it to filter it out, and it bills what it bills to filter it out at runtime. So you can control what that list looks like. We've given you the password protection on selection sets and browse. And we'll show you how to do some of these things later on. This was a big one for people because sometimes you had a selection set that was really crucial to your operation, and somebody would either make a mistake and type over a little value, and then they'd save it, and the next thing you knew, nothing was working. Now you can password protect it so that they can make changes to it. They can actually bring it up on the screen, load it, make changes to it, but they can't save it without knowing that password. We've done all kinds of cursor path enhancements. We've given you the ability to default from left to right, to top to bottom, so that it makes it easier for you to enter in a cursor path and then go in and just modify it and manipulate it to the way you want it. There was nothing worse for me than going to cursor path editing and I start putting in the first 3 fields that I remember were on the screen, but now I don't remember what the rest were. So there's also a hotkey that will actually switch the screen from the cursor editing to the screen so that you can say, okay, there's my next 2 fields that I want. Then you go back, you continue your editing. You don't have to exit, come back, and go back and forth. Now it's all automatic. We've added in scrolling fields. People always had a problem with our 80 by 25 screens, and they had not enough real estate, but they wanted the field on the screen. Now what you can do is you can take a particular field that's a long one, email address, and you can put just the first 10 characters of that email address on the screen as an input field. And it shows you that it's a special field because it's got a special marker at the end. And when you're in that field, it just scrolls right along until you're done typing whatever you want to type. And then you press enter and it goes back and shows the original 10 characters. Really nice feature. A lot of people have been using it because it does save on screen real estate. Then we have people who asked for index selections, selection sets for automatic indexes. Most of you who know filePro know that we've had selection sets, basically demand indexes, are built off selection sets. It's either all records or it's a selection set that narrows your ability to create that index. We had it in demand indexes, but we never had it in automatic. Now we do. It's really nice too. Then we've done a whole bunch of PDF enhancements, and we did this because of web, and we'll show you more of that later on. Within processing, we've given you the ability to replace information. Say you have a database where somebody always spelled street wrong. Okay, and you know how they spelled it wrong. They spelled it S-T-R-A-T or something. And you wanted to go through your entire database and change all those street misspellings to the correct spellings. Well, you're not going to do it one record at a time, and now you don't have to. You write a process, you use the replace key to tell it to replace that particular part of a data field, and it will replace it, and it's done within seconds instead of days. People liked ListBox, which is the list that comes up. You type the first character and it moves to that line. You type the same character again, and if there's another one there, it moves down, or you go Z and it goes to the end. But you were never able to type in a word. SelectBox allows you to do that. It's word type ahead instead of single characters. People kept asking for this one. I have a dimension in my array, but I really want to present it alphabetically. I want it sorted instead of just the way it happens to be filled. Sort array will now do that. You can take your dimension and you can actually run it through sort, and you can have it either ascending or descending. And that's the way it actually physically changes the dimensioned array. We added a user timeout because a lot of people would use the user command, and those of you not familiar with the user command, it allows you to go out to filePro, execute another program outside of filePro, and get a return value back into filePro. The problem is that if that outside program failed for some reason, filePro would never gain control again. It would just sit there, waiting. And now what we have is we have a user timeout. So if that program does not respond in a certain period of time, it'll come back to filePro anyways. You won't have data, you'll have an error. But at least now you can trap it and do something with it.
Can you adjust the time?
Yes, you can.
And the error?
Yes.
Great. Great.
Is all this available on F10? You just push F10, it will tell you all the rules?
Yes,
Thank you.
if Ernie's done his job.
I was gonna say, it will be. Thanks. And seriously, the F10, just keep in mind, that those are just kind of short notes. Depend on the online manual. That's gonna give you more detail than the F10.
The online manual gives you more detail, more examples. It's better organized, easier to search, but Ernie's right. Consider the F10 help to be a quick reference guide. The manual is what you depend on when you really want to know what something's doing or how to do it.
And I don't like to type.
Then we had, I skipped over. Then we had the same problem with printers that we had with output formats in the runtime environment. Whereas if people used -PQ to bring up the list of printers, sometimes they had a check printer that they didn't want listed on that selection. Now what you do is you have the ability to create an exclude list so that you can control what printers show on the screen if you use -PQ and you want people to select them.
Your connection on the mic package list, it's cutting in and out.
It might even be a battery problem. Yeah, it looks like the battery's giving out.
Here.
Medonly,
Switch.
ipapakal.
Yeah.
Medonly ninyo, mayroon kita? Mayroon kita? Okay.
All right, now I have to hold it. Turn me down. All right, then, well, not that loud, hello. That's good.
Pretty good.
All right. You've always been able to copy one lookup or one record to a lookup file. And the problem that people had is they kept thinking, I'm going to archive these records. I need to get rid of everything from 1920 and keep everything before it. But I want to keep those records as they are in an archive file. What happens when you do that is you do a copy and you lose the creation date and created by and all the original filePro system information that you really wanted to keep. So then you had to write additional routines in order to store it in another place or in another field. And what we've done is we've added what's called the archive command, and that takes the record and basically copies it the same as it always has, but it retains the system information so that you know the original creation date from the old file, the original user from the old file. All the system fields copy over as they are. They do not change just simply because you're moving it. We always had 10 printers in our printer maintenance. How many people here have 10 printers or less?
75.
See? 10 printers or less? Not many anymore. Everybody has a printer on their desk. Everybody has 6 printers in their server room. And so we had to expand that. We've gone to 99 printers. Now you just page up, page down, add, insert. You can put them anywhere you want. And it works out pretty well for everybody managing printers. And I know somebody's going to say, well, 99 is not enough. Yeah. Well, at least now that we've got 99, we probably could go to 999.
Or I can show you how to do it with one.
And he's going to show you how to do it with one.
PDF. Make a PDF first. Yeah.
All right, as you can see, we've added a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that is in the new releases that are bug fixes. Those are not listed here. There's a lot of things that are enhancements that are really under the hood enhancements that were done for GI as well as for web. And we'll talk more about those as time goes on. We are going to show you some things to try and give you a little more information on. Some of the topics we just touched on, and one of them was scrolling fields, because that's one that people seem to be interested in. And hopefully I have it here.
Can you put a scrolling field
Okay, I
2
did.
characters away from the right edge of the screen? Will it still scroll?
It will scroll as long as you have to have at least one,
Just one?
well, really 2, because you have to have the end of field character. So you have to make sure it's at least 2. This is an example here of a screen with a field
Hey, Bill? can I
that's been
ask one
truncated.
more?
Yep.
Can you put that to the edge of the screen on a browse? Have it be right near the 80th character on a browse also?
No, it doesn't scroll at that
It would be
point.
tough, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Feature.
When's that coming? Morgan's, Logan is making a mental note. Okay, the way you determine what it is, this particular field, if you look here, this particular one is 80 characters, okay? This is just like an email field. And I did 80 characters, but if you notice, it starts right here in the middle of the screen, and 80 characters obviously is the entire screen. So if I showed the whole thing, it would wrap around and be a mess. So what we've done is we've added in the backslash where we want it to stop. And from there,
That's how you do it on a report, that's great.
that's how you do it on a report as well. Yeah.
Does it work in pop-ups, pop-up update?
Yes.
That's because that's a screen. Makes sense.
All right, so on the sample record here, you see right down here, there's my email address. And if I go over to the end, there's the rest of it. Now what I did was I displayed the entire field down here so that you could see what it is. But it makes it really nice, and I think you can see the advantage to having scrollable fields now on your screens.
Are all the things you're talking about available on Unix and
Yes.
And you're also showing the field even though it's longer than the bottom line. Usually you just see the variable.
You know, what if it's at the bottom line, very bottom line, say the 78th character or 76, will it still work?
Sure.
Great, that's
It should. If it doesn't, it's a bug.
great.
No, not the scrolling field. If your field length is longer than whatever the bottom line is, before it would just show you the variable and it wouldn't show you the data. But that looks like your field was 80 characters and you're showing less than 80 on the bottom line.
Right.
So
So
that's.
it'll just stop wherever you have that backslash, it's gonna stop.
Oh, you have a backslash on the bottom line?
No, he's saying.
Oh, the normal one?
Real field.
If you're on the bottom
Oh,
line,
no, I think it still
It doesn't
scrolls.
automatically scroll.
it'll wrap if
It
it's
doesn't.
the first,
It does not automatically scroll.
It doesn't anymore, okay.
but it'll wrap if you're on one of the first 19 lines.
Yeah, no,
Right.
if on the,
But not on the last
bottom
one.
line though, it used to not show you any of the data if the field was longer than what was there.
Screen up.
One of the other things I wanted to show everybody, because they're not really familiar with what's called dookie. And dookie is something where, for example, if I press X on this, normally what would you expect to happen? It would exit. All right. What I've done here is I've popped the question: do you really want to exit? And I say yes.
Oh, that's the.
Now, how we do that?
Yeah.
Is by, don't know where all my, yeah, there it is, okay. No, I wanted to do the X one.
There you go.
Okay? All right, so now what we do is, because the only way you could get out of it before was to type in the word exit, or you might use it, a lot of people use it for forms, okay, where you press F or D for delete. There's any number of them where you couldn't actually do what you wanted filePro to do,
So you get up.
but because once you're in the processing, filePro is out of its exit routine and now processing would have to take care of it. So we've given you the ability to flip back and forth. So we press X, we pop up the question, and then we tell filePro to do the real X that we wanted you to do in the first place. So that's what that do key is all about. It gives you a lot more control. Show, oh yeah, okay, here's the F6 F9 search, right? And then F6, and it gives you all of your labels. So let's say I should have gotten there in the first place instead of paging up and down. And let's say I want to go to add key X. And I hit enter, and there I am. Filtering forms and reports.
Is that search sorted? Or is it in the order that you have them in the code?
It should be sorted.
You can find out.
It should be sorted.
H.
At the line 13,
So you have to
Now
say
F9, F6, and it is
Yep, it's sorted.
it's sorted. We must be using sort array for that.
That's what you mentioned today, was a sort array, right?
Yes.
Do you have directions on it, or, you know?
Yeah.
that you- Up, down, in other words, chronological?
Yes, you can do it either ascending or descending, yeah. All right, on sorting of reports, not sort, filtering reports. If I go to a report, assuming there is one here, and I go into options,
it was on page 4.
there it is right there. See the flag? Hide this from clerk. Yes or no? You don't want this particular output to be part of your form list when you press F? Answer this question yes, and it won't be there.
That's, oh, that's the other thing.
You don't have to necessarily build a custom list box anymore.
No.
It's still set up for that matrix for the 66 line.
No clerk, so you can form to do that.
And the other thing while I'm in here too is down here, if you want to see your print code list,
You're kidding.
just hit your F6 key and now your print code list is there.
Oh, that was always there. That was always there.
No, not inside, he's in cave. Right, you're in cave?
I'm in report maintenance.
He's on initialize.
See the whole list of.
What?
His initialization print codes. It was
Oh,
always-
hang
No,
on.
not the whole list.
We wanted to show you the other one. Yeah.
I used to pick them that way.
All the print codes, you really see starting and ending print codes.
If you hit F6.
Okay, printer name. Now you can press F6 here too.
Oh, that's new.
Okay?
And it's not commingling the printers versus the.
Good
print
idea,
code tables.
yeah.
Oh,
Great.
thank
That's
God.
correct. These are actual, this is, okay?
Just two different columns. that's-
However, if you hit F6, it's going to toggle between the two.
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah.
I can live with that.
So you can decide which one you want to use
Yeah, if you gave it.
on your own.
This makes me want to grow up again.
The actual printer name, it would be given the first printer that used that print code to print to it. So you could.
All right, now we're going to talk about, I guess we want to switch machines.
All the other stuff.
Ernie to start. If you use that line, if you use the code table.
All right, I'm going to turn this over to Chris Logan and Ernie, and they're going
If you
to
had one
expand on some of these other items that we've
You
mentioned.
named your printers the same as the tables.
We're going to be available throughout the weekend when we have small breaks, or Monday especially, because Monday's basically a day for everybody with their problems to be able to sit down and,
After my lecture.
after your lecture, yes. But come to think of it, Nancy, probably after your lecture, they won't have any questions. But yeah, we'll be able to sit down with you individually or as a group, a small group or whatever, and we'll go through a lot of this, this stuff that's of interest to you. That's why it's important to make notes, okay? Gee, one of the things he said was how we could do this. Well, can you show me how to do that? We might not think that you really care about seeing it, but you really might want to see about it. And we'll be available to show you how to do those things throughout the weekend.
I just wanted to mention about the data encryption. Like he mentioned, we have file or field encryption and file encryption. So if you have a legacy application, you got somebody's social security number, you have certain departments, you don't want them to see that. You can encrypt that one thing. You don't have to rewrite your code. Let's say now, as you move forward, you're going to keep all your social security numbers in a separate file. Now you can just encrypt that entire file. You don't have to do it individually. So that's why there's 2 levels of encryption.
I have a question about the file level encryption. Does it only unencrypt the records you're accessing as it's doing it? It's not?
Yes.
Correct.
Because you don't want to let Windows ever encrypt it because it wants to do the whole file all at once.
And I will
This
warn you,
is
you do that in a report, you just slow down your report.
It's
because
on my
it's
list.
processing every single.
But this is basically record level
It's
encryption.
record for record. It's not done batch, it's not stored in memory. So it just goes through, reads it, writes it, done. So
Like I said, if you do that in a report,
Yeah.
get some coffee. It will slow down a report.
But not if you use filePro's encrypt.
No, it still has to,
It's gonna
if
slow
you're
down.
gonna decrypt that on a report,
Yes, sir.
it's gotta do every single one. So yes, that report's gonna be slow.
He didn't mention that.
Slower.
slower.
Yeah,
Okay, so
implementing
that's on the questions.
even existing database. What's involved in implementing,
Database or field?
let's say database?
So if you find files, encrypt.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Save that stuff for the end.
Yeah, he can show you.
Let's see, change encryption key. Set that TS unit or key that you want to use for the password, it'll encrypt the file.
And you better remember, and you better remember, yes.
Oh, yeah.
You mean?
When does that come back into play though? When you need that password?
Whenever you go through, if you were to move this to another machine, you would also have a list of allowed licenses that would be able to actually access and modify this file. That password will
Okay.
also be asked whenever you try to make
And it
changes.
is licensed attached, so you can limit that to certain people,
I see.
certain customers.
But basically you do this and all, what it's gonna process, I take it through the entire,
Yep.
and then, wow. Okay.
When was that implemented?
5803. One of those.
5801.
Was it? Okay.
When was the field level?
That was 5.7.
Is doing, can you show us a field level? Is that?
57 is no longer supported.
Yeah, the field level-
Sorry.
field level-
That's my typical response, sorry. No, we'll still help.
Is there a
field
performance
level
hit
didn't
overall if you aren't encrypting all of your files?
There'll be a slight performance hit, yes.
No, it's not as drastic as what I was talking about on a report, though. If you're doing,
Yeah.
if you're doing
Sure.
field level encryption on a report, it's got to
Record for
That's
record.
painful. Yeah, it really is. But it's critical. I mean, if you got critical data, I mean, there's a trade-off. I mean, you don't want somebody printing out everybody's social security numbers and. Do you have an example of field level encryption? Tim, you probably have some field level encryption. You can show me.
Well, this is file level. So say you had a file with, well,
For field level?
Yeah,
I don't know how to do field level, do a file. This is set to unencrypted record by record.
What screen?
So you're not unencrypting the whole file.
Yeah, see up there?
Field code encrypt.
Not seeing it.
Okay. Line 8 maybe?
Up to you.
So the text, that's the encryption part, where it says encrypted text, that's encrypted, as you would see it normally. And then we decrypt it, so it came back to Logan, so you can see that what you put in, it was encrypted, then we decrypted it to be able to view it.
You want to see the code?
Yeah, it's just
I'd like to see the code. Actually.
Basically, it turns your data into gobbledygook that
Yep.
you can't read unless you have the key to read it. And there are some limits on how many characters you can encrypt and decrypt anything with this command within filePro. You can also encrypt and decrypt with external third-party Microsoft stuff, but presently only up to, Jason, 16 bytes, is it?
Yeah.
16 bytes, which we're exploring. But it's cool because we're actually doing some encryption in VB and then storing the data in filePro and letting filePro decrypt it and vice versa.
16 characters.
16 characters, thank you, not bits. That wouldn't be very much, would it? 16 bits.
He said when to exchange.
Yes, Richard.
Windows.
You run into an issue that I found with one of my clients where we're encrypting credit card numbers, and if you have two people using the same credit card number and want to encrypt it, you've got to be careful of how you create a nonce to encrypt it so that it's both the same if there are different records. You've got to be careful in what you're doing. And test it before you put it live. And test it, you keep testing it. Otherwise, you're gonna screw yourself up really bad once you put it into place.
But if you're storing credit card numbers or social security
So
numbers in your
these credit card
database,
numbers,
you should be encrypting anyway.
yeah, I know, that's why we're doing it, and we've got to decrypt it when we process the credit cards. So, you just have to be careful of what you're doing when you're working with encryption.
Because there's nothing worse than encrypting something and then not being able to get it back.
That's,
Because we can't get it back either.
It's called ransomware.
Yeah, we can't help no matter what you pay.
That's good to know.
One trick to what you said is you can concatenate two fields together. Like if you have a unique user ID number or customer ID, merge that with the credit card number and encrypt the combined one. And that way, the same credit card number showing up twice won't be the same because it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. As long as there might be some similarities depending upon the nonce, but they at least would be different.
Yes. Yep.
Good idea.
So if a customer sent me their key field or something, so I wanted to run some tests on their data and it was encrypted, I would need the encryption key on their machine to be able to read it on my machine.
Depends on how it's done. If it's done, you talk about field or rec or file.
Well, I guess file.
Yeah, you'd have to authorize a license to do it.
Usually doesn't happen, usually I connect
Right.
to their machine and do it there.
Can you do the encryption without doing limited license thing, though? You can encrypt an entire file.
Yes.
That's not tied to the license.
Right, it's
Correct.
not.
You just have to have the key.
Right.
Right.
So you can lock it down as much as you want.
So what is the edit allowed license list?
You've got,
It makes it so that the file can only be used on certain machines that share the license. So if they have their license number, their serial number in the list, it'll only work on machines that are authorized to use this file.
so if it's copied elsewhere, then
That's
that's good.
particularly handy for developers because developers, all right, sometimes you need to get a copy of your customer's data and work with it to find out what's going on or enhance the product, but the data is not available on your machine unless they authorize it to be on your machine. And that's what that list is for.
Now, but the dual right, the mirroring, that is not application mirroring, that's data mirroring. And it is live. When you save a record and you mirror set up, it.
is it fast enough to go off the LAN?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It can go out to the.
PF data to PFDIR2, and you set up mirroring. You point it to wherever you want it to go.
And if you wanted to go across the net through routers and everything, it would still be reasonably fast enough to work?
I'm not seeing
Would
any
be
issues.
secure, but I mean,
With mirroring, I've not seen that issue on
I've
network.
seen no slowness in anything that I use it on.
So you could have your server in New York and save to another server in.
Yeah, but what protocol are you transmitting that? If you're using SMB, you don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah, typically, you're gonna wanna do that on your local, you know.
Not on 139 anyway, there's new ports, you just pick another port, couldn't you? If you're gonna use SMB, just pick a more secure port than that.
We'll talk about that later.
Go through
You steal my thunder.
I'm retired, no, we won't.
But it does not copy your processing, your screens, it's just a data mirror.
And if the
So-
mirror breaks, there's an easy way to read.
Exactly, and it tells you when something has happened, if your network goes down, you lost connection to that, your backup server, it will tell you that the mirror is broken, you need to fix it, so.
Question on
Is it
that.
duplicating, or is it writing to a separate key file?
Yes.
And it's only sending the write contents, it's not actually doing like an rsync of the key file, it's just saying,
When they save the key from your main file, it's automatically saved in the mirror.
so it's a small amount of data.
It's not doing the whole key record.
No,
It's
Yeah.
record by record.
Record by
Correct.
record, okay.
Now, if something happens to the mirror link,
Of
if your
course.
network goes down and you can't get to that mirror, it's gonna tell the user that there's a problem with this, please contact your administrator. Okay, then you go in and you flip the flag, and you fix the problem, so the connection's back. Then you go in to define and flip that back on again, and then it does a sync of the entire file.
Right. But as long as you've got a connection, it's record by record.
Is that sync a comparison sync, or does it recopy the whole thing?
Recopies the whole file.
Can you please
Question
explain
on
dual
that.
write to ODBC?
What'd you say? Sorry?
Can you please explain dual write to ODBC?
Yep, we're going to be getting into that.
That's an excellent.
Glad you asked.
Question. When you say it writes like the key or whatever, does that put it, I'm assuming it puts it in the correct folder?
Yes, it does.
So I could have all my processing and everything in there, and all I would have to do is rebuild my indexes?
Yeah, no, it backs up indexes.
It does? Okay.
Oh, it does the index? Oh.
Yes.
So what you're saying is I could set up a server and all of my clients could be saved on my server as they do work, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I like that. Thank you.
But you
No.
can't,
You can't run on it,
you can't
I don't
run
care,
concurrent.
as long as I got.
but it's secure.
Yeah.
Yes.
When it rebuilds, if you have to rebuild it, can you be running while it's rebuilding it, or like a RAID array, you'll rebuild while you're still functioning, or no? You have to.
You have to go to define files while you're doing it.
Yeah, you gotta open defined files, so you're gonna lock people out of that
Oh, yeah, you
file,
can't-
so,
Right, okay, it's for the, that makes sense, good.
yeah.
What
And
if-
it is very quick,
That's good.
you know, based on your network, it's real quick to resync.
Bill, what did you mean when you say you can't run it?
You know, you're in defined files to turn up the mirror.
No,
I mean, you
when
can't
it's-
run on the
copy the
when it's-
mirrored server, you
Right,
can't
when it's in
run
the
it on
process of
license.
being mirrored, you can't actually concurrently use the mirrored copy with another instance of filePro. When it's
Cannot.
mirroring, it's just mirrored data. If you try to access it, you're going to end up breaking the link. But if you just needed to restore from backup and you were to copy that back in your main application, it would work perfectly fine and everything would be exactly how
Okay,
it was.
okay, that's what I was
Yeah.
looking for.
When you have a mirrored file, the header is modified,
Right.
and it's got additional data in it. And then if you go to the mirrored file, that map's identical. It's got that same information in it, so that if this one breaks, you can copy it over and you're back to where you started. And that particular map at that point has link information in it to tell it where to go, and at that point, it would be pointing to itself, and you can't do that.
It's really like a live backup.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really is like a live backup.
But
but
if
it's
server
not-
A mirrors to server B, you can't even read the file on server B?
No.
In a clerk?
Right, that's.
Which is fine.
Well, another question.
Have the comfort of knowing it's there.
And remember, you have no processing screens or nothing unless you copy them over manually. It's just a data
Yeah,
mirror.
understood there, but
Do you,
with
is the
Linux,
index,
that's not a big deal.
well,
They are not encrypted. The indexes are not encrypted.
indexes are not. Okay, can you use indexes with an encrypted? I'm asking just because I just created an encrypted file and the option to create automatic indexes.
indexes will still be built off of the non-encrypted data. So when you go through, it will go through and decrypt while it's searching. Or it will actually, the index will know where it needs to look into the data or key file in order to pull out the record. So it will decrypt it at that point. But the index stores the plain text information that's used for the comparisons in the index.
Ernie.
Look, can I, building on that, if you do file level encryption and store the encrypted version,
Right.
not the original version, you're entering a dummy variable or like you had up here a second ago that Chris showed. Then the index is actually based on the encrypted one, so the index data is encrypted internally. However, can you still search it?
No, you cannot, because at that point, it's treating it as the encrypted data.
So you would need to write your own little query, search for this, encrypt the
Correct.
search key.
Right.
It's not automatic.
Exactly.
So you cannot have an automatic index with an encrypted file. Is that-
You can have one, but the data that's stored in the index is not encrypted.
So don't index anything that you want control.
Yeah, don't index sensitive information. Like, don't try to index by like someone's social security number if you're concerned.
Right.
Which you should be. Yes.
If you set up the two servers, like you said, you have server A in New York, you have server B in California, you're copying the key file.
Right.
If server A dies, can you bring up your users on server B?
Yes, you could.
And then it's no longer mirrored, but now you have all your data right up to the last record that was saved.
Correct.
As long as you've copied your application.
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
I can't stress that enough. It's data, Mary, not applications.
And if you're syncing the two servers so you get all your applications up also, will that damage the mirror if nobody's in it?
If nobody's in it, it will not damage it on server B.
Right.
Right.
So now
As
everybody's
long as
up.
someone's not in there while it's actually trying to write to the file,
To
it should
sync
be
it.
perfectly fine.
Yeah. So you can rsync it like 1 in the morning, there's nobody on.
Yes.
No foul. In the morning when they start up, you're still doing a record by record mirroring.
Correct.
So you have an instant backup, fault tolerant system somewhere else, anywhere in the world basically.
Yep.
Hold on, I'm confused. You're saying that he can run it now on on server.
If
As long
as
they're not connected.
As long as they're not connected.
Right. So if your main server
That's
dies.
And you have a valid license on server B.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, no, of course. That goes without saying.
Yeah. But that's actually set in the environment.
The wheels are turning.
There's a
There's TF data 2 and
They have a
TF
redundant
32.
system if we need it. Gotta put it in.
And we also have, I don't know if they mentioned it, we also have FTP option now. We have a function where if you want to do mirroring, just have an FTP command and run a menu.
That would be better than SMB.
Yes.
But as far as, Phil, get the dual write, we can now write this out to a MySQL file. Yeah, mirroring to SQL
I got lots of
instead of a
questions.
file format.
So is there a reason you can't create an automatic index when you're creating an encrypted file for the first time?
No, he said you can create it, it's just, it won't.
It's not encrypted.
Right.
Whatever's indexed.
He
is
says he doesn't
encrypted.
have the option to create an index.
Yeah, it's not,
What's it say?
it says no when you can't do anything about it.
That's probably a lock file issue.
Yeah. It would.
It's probably just a lock file.
That's a brand new file.
I don't know. Go ahead.
So are you saying that if we're backing up APPL, say every hour, to another backup server, and you're also doing mirroring, it's not gonna break the mirror?
That would depend. That depends on if the file is currently being accessed by, like, let's say an rsync when it's trying to write the mirrored copy. If it tries to write to the file and it's unavailable for whatever reason or throws a system error, you're not going to be able to actually complete that link and it will fail the mirroring.
So the business practice is, if you're doing the mirroring, don't do the backup.
Correct. Do one or the other, but you still need a backup like your processing table and
Right.
your tub files, yes.
Gotcha.
So, do you ever plan on making an API for like cloud storage, like Azure or cloud platform or whatever, where you can just put in the credentials or whatever, and then have your dual write go to
An S3.
cloud storage?
We've talked about that very little at this point, but we are planning on talking about it.
So Google, Amazon, those big boys. You can go.
Has done this backup stuff, he might have some idea that place on that. So back to the ODBC ones?
Yes, so the way that the dual write to ODBC works is you have some sort of a SQL data source or some other data source that can communicate using the SQL syntax. What you do is you go through, and I've already done this on this machine, where you go through, you set up your database, and you create a DSN. And your DSN needs to be configured to be filePro DSN. And I can show you guys in a second the actual configuration file that I'm using. I'll hold this for you. Thanks. Okay, so I can show you the configuration file first. So, it's fine, I can do this. So this is how I have this one configured on this machine. I went through and just configured this to use the database filePro SQL. I put in the server and add in the port for the database. Just gave it the user and password inside the configuration, and then told ODBC, hey, I want you to use this as a data source, so filePro can then go through and just automatically sync to it as soon as you enable it here. Yes.
So the username and password, that's going to be SQL authentication here.
Correct.
Is
Yes.
trusted authentication also supported like we use with low level?
Should be, yes.
So that if you're on a Windows domain, it can use the Windows domain user.
Correct. This works on both Linux, STO, BSD, and Windows. So it works on all platforms. Okay, so I'll go back into define files. Go back down to the SQL test file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into options, and I'm going to flag it to dual write to ODBC. So I'll just flag that, save, and then exit. And that's it. Now it's already set up. So now we'll go through. We'll go to inquire, update, add.
I'm sorry, you had to create the table though, right?
Correct. You have to. Well, you don't have to create the table. You have to create the database. So you'll create a database in there called like in my case I use filePro SQL. So whatever you have specified in your DSN as being your database, that's where all these tables will be created, but it will automatically create the tables for you when you create the files.
But be careful, because, like Bud mentioned, it's not gonna do blobs or memos. And check your data types, because right now we got most of them
We got most of them
charge.
working. Yes.
And even our .0 are coming over as varchars, correct?
Correct. If they're a user-defined edit, they will just come across as a varchar.
So you may want to tweak that on the SQL side if it's important. Depends on what you're using.
It attempts to guess the closest edit type that it can use, and it will try it.
So like a .0 edit's going to come in as an integer.
Correct.
Or a large int.
And I have an example here in the file, so I can show you in a second. But I'll go in.
But it physically creates the table when you tell, once you have that connection, it'll be under the FilePro, in his case, FilePro SQL.
How does it handle spaces in your field names?
It does handle them. I will show you.
Okay. Did you have to manually, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll change that there. And it will automatically restructure as you restructure in FilePro. So,
I thought I was going to have to write that.
make sure that it's.
Thought you were going to have to spin up the create table.
Try to make it easier for you.
Please.
Let's see, let's make sure that that's not.
While he's bringing that up, we've been exporting to SQL copies of our tables, or most of them, so that I can shut up the people that say, well, your data's not accessible from SQL. No, the data's protected inside our program internally, but there is a view of it, to borrow a SQL term, available to you from SQL Server. But to do that, we either have to run nightly exports to post the stuff over, or we do it with low-level commands when you hit the save escape key, that it immediately updates the mirror, the clone that sits out in SQL. But we have to define the SQL tables. The second thing that we've also struggled with is you can export data from FilePro and you can suck it into Excel. But have you ever had like an 8-digit zero padded field in FilePro? What does Excel do to that? It strips all the leading zeros off. It messes up the data unless you can go with this, because the fields are defined. That will be defined as varchar. SQL will not mess up that data. when you write that same field into SQL. And Jennifer back here has been testing this, where you can go into Excel, define the data connection in Excel to point to the same SQL server. So now I've got filePro talking to SQL, talking to Excel, without any corruption of the data. At least that's what we're hoping this will give us an easier way to do.
Yep, I'm going into, not used to using SQL too often. I'm going in right now and I'm just selecting the database that, the database that's currently being used by filePro to actually store all of the data. So I'm going there, show the tables. And right there is the file that we had just created and synced across. So that will be the SQL test file. So if I do a select.
Tim, you'll be able to do this live without having to run an export.
That's the idea. You're basically live mirroring everything over there. Now, I'm going to guess there's certain things we won't have, like @RN won't be there. Creation date and update date and the 20-byte system things won't be there because they're not fields. Am I correct?
You just put record number over, but if you need an auto increment, you do it yourself.
You say you do put record number over? Or?
Yeah.
Yes, right here.
When it syncs, it will put record.
So it's your fields.
But that's the way it was.
Qualifiers there too.
But that's the way it is when you create the mirror. Obviously, if you go back and delete that record and add it and reuse that, it's going to show up.
And with SP record, that's guaranteed to be unique. That's
no.
You have. Sure.
It is unique. It will reuse previous records just like filePro does.
It will go back and use that.
Correct.
Okay.
But they will always be unique.
SQL usually needs one unique key, but that'll give it to us. And I'm glad to see the qualifier there because that missing from high level made high level not usable for us.
This is great for people who are writing PHP web pages and need filePro data. It's live.
And as you can see, it does handle spaces and the field names. What it does is it goes through when it actually tries to sync it. It escapes all of the different field names and then uses the escape version in order to place it into SQL. So you can have whatever name that you can type in filePro should work perfectly fine as a field name.
Did you say creation date comes across or not?
Currently does not.
Okay. You'd have to create a new field and
Correct.
put it in.
We could add that.
You could put on a wish list that there be another setting that would say add system fields, just the same way you had FP record and qual, and then populate those two. You could also have a way to set each field as to whether it should be included in this or not. Much the way you did the selection on the indexes, where you could say, I've got 100 fields, I really only want the first 20 to be put here and not the rest of them.
Correct.
I'm sorry, my mind's already on to how.
I'm sure.
This is great.
Does that answer your question?
I don't know how to do it, but.
You know it can be done, right?
Yeah, it can be done now.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the, I've been around here for over 30 years. I think that's the greatest feature because it gives you flexibility to speak to all the other systems.
It's not creating any indexes in the SQL environment.
It does
So
not.
if you want, but it won't blow them away when it regenerates, hopefully?
It shouldn't blow away indexes, correct. It will go through and attempt to, it will resize the fields, it will rename them if it can. It will change its edit type. It will also rewrite all the data for all the fields when you go through and you try to.
When you define a table in SQL, you have to define indexes if you don't want it to basically have to scan through the file to find anything. So, yeah, we can test that.
We're gonna take a break now because we were supposed to take our break at 10:15. It's 10:30. So let's take a 10 or 15 minute break. Get yourself some coffee and water, and then we'll.